Commander Vextar stood on the bridge of his massive warship, watching the green and blue planet called New Geneva spin slowly below. The alien commander had long fingers that ended in sharp claws, and his purple skin gleamed under the soft lights of his control room. He had been doing this job for over 200 years, and every war had followed the same peaceful pattern. The Zephyrian way of fighting was simple and clean. When two groups disagreed, they would send their best fighter to battle one-on-one. The winner's side got what they wanted, and the loser's side accepted defeat with honor. No messy battles with thousands of deaths, no destroyed cities or crying families, just two warriors, a fair fight, and everyone else stayed safe. Captain Lee Minho had been brave, Vextar thought as he remembered the duel from 3 days ago. The human had fought well with his energy sword, moving quickly and striking with skill. But Zephyrian warriors trained for centuries, and their champion Dexmore had won after only 20 minutes of combat. Minho died with dignity, and now his people would surrender the same way. Down on the planet, 50,000 human colonists waited in their small towns and farming communities. They had built a good life here, growing food and raising children, under the light of 2 orange suns. But they had also built their homes on a world that belonged to the Zephyrian trade routes, and that could not continue. Vextar's fleet floated in perfect formation around the planet. 12 beautiful ships with curved hulls that looked more like artwork than weapons. Their surfaces were smooth and white, decorated with flowing lines of silver and gold. Each ship hummed quietly with advanced technology, but their weapons stayed, powered down as a sign of respect. The alien commander believed deeply in the old ways. War should never be about anger or hatred. It was about solving problems between civilized beings. You fought until someone won, then everyone shook hands and moved on with their lives. The Zephyrians had brought peace to over 300 worlds. Using these methods, Sub-Commander Thexval approached with a datapad in his hands. His younger purple face showed concern as he spoke. "Sir, the humans are taking longer than usual to prepare their surrender ceremony. Should we send them another message?" Vextar waved one clawed hand dismissively. "Give them time, old friend. Losing is never easy, especially for a species so young. They have only been traveling between stars for a few hundred years. They do not yet understand how these things work." The bridge was quiet except for the soft beeping of computers and the gentle hum of the ship's engines. Through the large windows, New Geneva looked peaceful and beautiful. White clouds drifted over brown continents and blue oceans. It seemed wrong that such a lovely world had caused so much trouble. "Their champion fought bravely," Vextar continued, his voice respectful. "Minho showed real skill with his blade. In a few more centuries, humans might produce warriors worthy of our greatest champions. They learn quickly." Thexval nodded and returned to his station. Around the bridge, other Zephyrian officers monitored their instruments with calm efficiency. Everything was proceeding exactly as it should. Soon the humans would broadcast their formal surrender, and the Zephyrian fleet would accept it with appropriate ceremony. Then, New Geneva would be relocated to another world, and the trade route would be reopened. War, Vextar thought with satisfaction, was indeed an art form when conducted properly. The space around New Geneva suddenly twisted and bent as something enormous tore through the fabric of hyperspace. Warning alarms screamed across every Zephyrian ship as sensors detected the massive energy signature appearing just outside their formation. What emerged from the swirling portal made Commander Vextar's jaw drop open in surprise. The human vessel was nothing like the sleek artistic ships of the Zephyrian fleet. This thing looked like it had been built in a junkyard by someone who cared more about function than beauty. Its hull was a patchwork of different metals, welded together with thick seams that spoke of countless repairs. Scorch marks and dents covered every surface, telling stories of battles fought and survived. The ship was massive, easily 3 times longer than Vextar's flagship, but it moved through space with surprising grace despite its ugly appearance. Strange antenna arrays stuck out at odd angles, and weapon ports dotted the hull like the eyes of some metal monster. This was not a ship built for ceremonies or parades. This was a machine built for one purpose only. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission," reported Communications Officer Yelthar, his voice slightly shaky. "It is coming on very old radio frequencies. The signal is strong but primitive. The voice that filled the Zephyrian bridge was deep and steady, speaking in Galactic Standard, with an accent that made some words sound sharp and others flow like music. Zephyrian vessels, this is Captain Park Ji-hoon of the United Earth ship. Retribution. I am requesting immediate safe passage to evacuate civilian populations from New Geneva. Please respond. Vextar looked at the crude human ship with a mixture of amusement and curiosity. The vessel was clearly ancient by galactic standards, probably using technology that was hundreds of years out of date. Its weapon systems appeared to be simple kinetic launchers and basic energy projectors. How quaint that these humans still thought such primitive tools could matter in modern warfare. Captain Park, Vextar replied, his voice taking on the formal tone used for diplomatic communications. I am Commander Vextar of the Zephyrian Confederation. Your colony's champion, Captain Lee Minho, has already fallen in honorable single combat. The matter is settled according to galactic law. However, we respect your courage in coming here. We offer you the same honor we offered him. Send your greatest warrior, and let them face our champion Dexmore in single combat. This is the civilized way to resolve disputes between honorable species. The response came back almost immediately, and the tone made several Zephyrian officers look up from their stations in surprise. There was no anger in the human captain's voice, no desperation or fear, just a calm certainty that somehow felt more threatening than any shouted challenge. Negative, Commander. We did not come here to play games or follow your rituals. We came here for our people and we will take them home. I strongly advise you to stand aside and allow us to proceed with the evacuation. Sub-Commander Thexville leaned closer to Vextar and whispered, Sir, do they not understand the situation? They have one ship against our entire fleet. Perhaps they are confused about our customs. Vexitar studied the human vessel more carefully. Despite its crude appearance, there was something unsettling about the way it held position in space. The ship did not move like a merchant vessel or even a typical military craft. It sat there like a predator watching prey, perfectly still, but somehow radiating danger. Captain Park, Vextar said, trying to keep his voice patient and diplomatic, you seem to misunderstand the situation. Your people have already lost according to the ancient laws of warfare. We are offering you an honorable way to join them. Surely your species values courage and tradition. The silence that followed stretched for nearly a full minute before the human captain responded. The Zephyrian fleet began to move with the precision of a dance that had been practiced for thousands of years. 200 gleaming ships spread out in a perfect circle around the single human vessel, each one taking its assigned position with elegant grace. Their formation was beautiful to watch, like silver birds performing an ancient ritual in the depths of space. Commander Vexistar felt confident as he watched his fleet complete the encirclement. The human ship sat motionless in the center, dwarfed by the overwhelming display of Zephyrian military power. Surely now the primitive humans would see reason and accept the honorable path forward. Tactical Officer Rendal, display our formation. For the human vessel, Vextar ordered. Let them see what they face if they choose the path of violence. The tactical display showed the complete picture. 200 advanced warships, each one equipped with weapons that could crack planets, surrounding one outdated human battleship that looked like it belonged in a museum. The mathematics were simple and brutal. Even if the human ship fought with desperate courage, it would be vaporized within minutes of opening fire. Vextar opened a direct communication channel to Captain Park, genuinely curious about how this strange species would react to such overwhelming odds. Perhaps they would finally understand the wisdom of the Zephyrian way. Captain Park, he began, his voice carrying the patient tone of a teacher explaining something to a slow student. I hope you can see our formation on your sensors. Your ship is certainly impressive for such primitive technology, and I respect the courage it took to come here. But you are vastly outnumbered, 200 to 1. Surely your honor code demands single combat rather than meaningless slaughter. We could destroy you in moments, but we prefer the civilized approach. The silence that followed lasted long enough for Vextar to wonder if the communication system had malfunctioned. When Captain Park finally spoke, his voice had the same calm, steady tone as before, but something in it made the alien commander's skin crawl with unease. Commander, "I think there's been a serious misunderstanding between our species," Park said, each word pronounced with careful precision. "Humans don't have honor codes in war. We have exactly one rule when fighting begins: win at any cost." The words hung in the air of the Zephyrian bridge like a physical presence. Several officers looked up from their stations with confused expressions. Sub-Commander Thexval tilted his head as if he had not heard correctly. "I do not understand," Vextar replied, genuinely puzzled. "All civilized species have codes of honor in warfare, rules that prevent unnecessary suffering, traditions that allow both sides to maintain dignity even in defeat. How can you have war without honor?" Captain Park's response came immediately, and this time there was something almost sad in his voice, as if he were explaining something unpleasant but necessary to a child. "Commander, honor is a luxury that species develop when they become the strongest in their neighborhood. When you always win, you can afford to be polite about it. Humans learned to fight on a world where being polite got you killed. We spent 10,000 years trying to wipe ourselves out with every weapon we could imagine. The survivors were the ones who understood that war is not about honor or tradition or looking good while you fight." The human captain paused, and when he continued, his voice carried the weight of terrible experience. "War is about making the other side stop fighting. Everything else is just decoration." Officer Yelthar looked at his commander with wide eyes. "Sir, what does he mean?" Vextar stared at the human ship on his display screen. It had not moved, had not powered up weapons, had not made any threatening gestures. Yet somehow the atmosphere on the Zephyrian bridge had changed completely. For a moment, space around New Geneva was completely still. 200 Zephyrian warships hung in perfect formation, their weapons powered but not yet activated, waiting for the traditional dance of honorable combat to begin. The human ship Retribution sat motionless in the center of their circle, like a dark metal island surrounded by an ocean of gleaming alien vessels. Commander Vextar expected the human captain to position his ship according to ancient protocols. First, both sides would display their weapons as a show of strength. Then they would exchange formal challenges and counter-challenges. Finally, they would engage in careful, measured combat that would end when one side admitted defeat or suffered acceptable losses. Instead, the human ship did something completely unexpected. Without warning, without ceremony, without any of the traditional gestures that preceded civilized warfare, the Retribution suddenly came alive. Dozens of launch ports along its scarred hull opened simultaneously, and thousands of small objects shot out in every direction like seeds from an exploding flower. "What is happening?" Sub-Commander Thexval demanded, staring at his sensor display in confusion. "Are they launching escape pods? Some kind of distress signal?" The objects were tiny compared to normal space weapons, each one no bigger than a person's fist. They moved incredibly fast, accelerating to tremendous speeds in mere seconds. The Zephyrian targeting computers, designed to track large missiles and energy beams, struggled to lock onto targets so small and numerous. "Debris?" Thexval asked, watching the strange cloud of projectiles spread across space like a deadly storm. "Are they throwing garbage at us?" Officer Rendal frantically worked his controls, trying to make sense of what his instruments were, telling him, "Sir, these objects are too small for our weapons to target effectively. They appear to be solid metal, nothing more than chunks of iron and steel." Vextar felt a cold knot forming in his stomach as he watched the primitive projectiles race toward his beautiful fleet. Something was terribly wrong. This was not how civilized species fought wars. This was chaos, random and barbaric. The first kinetic round hit the Zephyrian cruiser Endless Glory like an invisible hammer blow from an angry god. The chunk of metal, moving at a significant fraction of light speed, punched through energy shields that had been specifically designed to deflect laser cannons and plasma weapons. The shield generators had never been tested against simple pieces of iron traveling at impossible velocities. The projectile tore through the ship's hull as if it were made of paper instead of advanced alien alloys. Hull plating crumpled and twisted. Internal bulkheads collapsed. Atmosphere rushed out through the massive hole, carrying equipment and crew members into the vacuum of space. Before Commander Vexistar could fully process what had happened to the first ship, two more Zephyrian vessels suffered the same fate. The kinetic rounds were impossibly simple weapons, nothing more than metal slugs fired from electromagnetic rails, but their sheer speed turned them into planet-cracking weapons of destruction. 3 of his beautiful warships went dark in the first 10 seconds of combat. Emergency beacons activated automatically, sending distress signals into the void. Rescue shuttles launched from nearby vessels, racing to save whatever crew members might have survived the devastating impacts. Through the chaos and confusion, a clear human voice cut across all communication frequencies. It belonged to communications, Officer Kim So-jin, and her words carried the cold determination of someone who had seen too much war. For New Geneva, for Earth, no quarter given, none expected. The transmission sent chills down Vextar's spine. This was not the voice of a civilized warrior following ancient traditions. This was the voice of someone who understood that war was about survival, not honor. As more kinetic rounds found their targets, the alien commander began to realize that his fleet was not facing honorable opponents who would fight according to established rules. They were facing humans. The kinetic bombardment was just the beginning of Commander Vextar's nightmare. As his fleet reeled from the unexpected attack, trying to adapt their targeting systems to track the small, fast-moving projectiles, the human ship began doing things that violated every principle of civilized warfare. The Retribution suddenly accelerated directly toward a damaged Zephyrian cruiser called the Morning Star. For a moment, Vextar thought the human ship was moving to rescue survivors or offer medical assistance, as was proper according to galactic conventions. Instead, the scarred human battleship slammed into the alien vessel at full speed. The impact was devastating. The Morning Star's elegant hull crumpled like tin foil, and both ships spun away from each other, trailing debris and atmosphere. But while the Zephyrian vessel was completely destroyed, the human ship somehow survived the collision. Its front section was badly damaged, with entire decks torn away and exposed to space, but it kept fighting. "This is impossible, Sub-Commander." Vexval shouted over the wailing alarms that now filled the Zephyrian bridge. "They are using their own ship as a battering ram. This is barbaric. This is madness." But the humans were not finished with their impossible tactics. As the Retribution pulled away from the wreckage of the Morning Star, something incredible happened. The severed front section of the human ship, which should have been nothing more than useless debris, suddenly activated small thruster engines. The torn piece of hull, still containing several decks and what appeared to be weapon systems, began moving under its own power. The detached section rammed into another Zephyrian ship, exploding on impact and taking the alien vessel with it. Somehow, the humans had designed their ship so that even the broken pieces could continue fighting independently. Vextar watched in growing horror as the human ship performed another impossible maneuver. The Retribution's main reactor began glowing, brighter and brighter, building up energy far beyond safe operating levels. Instead of shutting down the overloading system, the humans deliberately triggered what should have been a catastrophic malfunction. The reactor pulse that erupted from the human ship was not a weapon in any traditional sense. It was a controlled explosion, a carefully managed disaster that sent waves of electromagnetic energy racing through space. The pulse overloaded Zephyrian electronics, causing system failures throughout the alien fleet. "Sir, they are overloading their own reactor as a weapon," Officer Rendell reported, his voice filled with disbelief. "The energy readings suggest their entire ship should have been destroyed." But the human ship was still there, still fighting, though now it glowed with dangerous radiation, and sparks flew from damaged systems all along its hull. Somehow the humans had built a vessel that could survive its own self-destruction and keep fighting. A new voice cut across the communication. Channels clear and analytical despite the chaos of battle. Lieutenant Commander Choi Hee-jin began broadcasting tactical information in calm, professional tones, as if she were giving a lecture at a military academy rather than fighting for her life. Zephyrian hull design shows critical weakness at junction. Points between Section 7 and 12. Optimal ramming angle is 37 degrees relative to target's main axis. Energy shield generators appear to be centrally located, making them vulnerable to kinetic strikes at the following coordinates. The broadcast continued, providing detailed analysis of Zephyrian ship design and tactical weaknesses. But what truly terrified Commander Vextar was not the information itself, but the calm, methodical way it was being delivered. The humans were not fighting in desperate panic or berserker rage. They were fighting with cold, calculated precision. Every system on the human ship seemed to have been designed with multiple combat applications in mind. The communications array could be overloaded to create jamming fields. The navigation system could calculate ramming courses. Even the life support systems appeared to have backup functions as weapons. As more of his beautiful ships fell to these impossible tactics, Vextar finally understood the terrible truth. The humans had not built a warship in the traditional sense. They had built a weapon that happened to carry a crew. As the battle raged around New Geneva, Captain Park Ji-hoon made a decision that would forever change how the Zephyrian Confederation viewed humanity. He opened a communication channel that reached every ship in the alien fleet, overriding their security protocols with ease that suggested human technology was far more advanced than it appeared. Commander Vextar, honored warriors of the Zephyrian fleet. Park's voice came through clear and steady, despite the chaos of combat surrounding his damaged ship. I think it's time you understood exactly who you're fighting. The main screens aboard every Zephyrian vessel suddenly flickered to life, displaying images that made the alien crews gasp in shock and horror. The footage was grainy and old, showing humans in primitive uniforms crouching in muddy holes dug into the ground. Explosions lit up grey skies as soldiers fired crude weapons at each other across barren landscapes. These are trenches from what we call World War I, Park's voice explained calmly, as if he were giving a history lesson rather than fighting a desperate battle. Humans spent 4 years sitting in holes full of mud and dead bodies, shooting at other humans who were sitting in different holes. We lost 20 million people learning how to kill each other more efficiently. The images changed, showing cities reduced to rubble, civilians running through smoke-filled streets while buildings collapsed around them. Soldiers moved from house to house, fighting room by room through the ruins of what had once been homes. Can schools? This is what we call urban warfare. When we couldn't kill each other fast enough in open fields, we learned to fight in cities. Every window became a sniper's nest. Every basement became a fortress. We turned our own homes into battlefields. Commander Vextar felt sick as he watched the footage. This was not warfare as the Zephyrians understood it. This was systematic destruction, the complete abandonment of honor and civilization in favor of pure survival. The transmission continued, showing mushroom clouds rising over cities, orbital bombardments from space that turned entire continents into glass, and weapons that seemed designed not just to kill enemies, but to make entire planets uninhabitable for generations. My weapons officer, Lieutenant Kang Min-jung, has spent her entire career studying 3,000 years of human military history, Park continued, his voice carrying a note of something that might have been pride or sadness. We have been perfecting the art of killing each other since our ancestors first picked up sharp sticks and realized they could hurt things with them. The images shifted again, showing vast museums filled with displays of human weapons. Primitive clubs and spears gave way to swords and bows, then to guns and cannons, then to tanks and fighter jets, and finally to weapons that could crack moons and boil atmospheres. This is just one of Earth's war museums, Park explained. We have hundreds of them. Every city on our planet has monuments to the wars we fought, the battles we won and lost, the friends we buried. We study our military failures more carefully than most species study their greatest victories. Subcommander Thexval stared at his screen in growing horror. Sir, these humans, they have been fighting continuous wars for thousands of years. Not continuous, Park's voice answered, as if he had heard the question. Sometimes we had peace for a few decades, but peace always made us nervous, so we would invent new enemies to fight. We fought over land, over resources, over ideas, over which invisible gods we thought were real. When we ran out of good reasons to fight, we fought over bad reasons. When we ran out of bad reasons, we made up new ones. The final image showed Earth itself, blue and green and beautiful, but covered with the scars of countless wars. Cities rebuilt on the ruins of older cities, farmland that had been battlefields, mountains carved by weapons that could reshape continents. Commander Vextar finally understood the terrible truth. The Zephyrians had evolved honor and civilization because they had always been the strongest species in their region of space. They could afford to be polite because no one could truly threaten them. Humans were different. They were the survivors of a world where being civilized got you killed. While the battle raged and Zephyrian ships continued to fall, something incredible was happening that made Commander Vextar question everything he thought he knew about warfare. The human ship Retribution was not just fighting and taking damage like a normal vessel would. Instead, it was doing something that should have been completely impossible according to every law of space combat. The battered human battleship was getting stronger. At first, Vextar thought his sensors were malfunctioning. The readings showed the Retribution extending long mechanical arms toward the wreckage of destroyed Zephyrian ships, pulling chunks of debris and salvageable technology into cargo bays that seemed to appear from nowhere along its hull. "Science Officer Nextar, explain these readings," Vextar demanded, his voice tight with stress as another of his cruisers exploded under a barrage of human weapons. "The enemy vessel appears to be collecting our destroyed ships." Nextar's long fingers danced over his control panel, trying to make sense of what his instruments were telling him. "Sir, the human ship has deployed what appear to be automated salvage systems. They are stripping useful materials from our wreckage, metals, electronics, power cells, even weapons components. But that was only the beginning of the impossibility." Deep inside the Retribution's hull, Chief Engineer Yun Taimin coordinated a process that turned the captured alien technology into new human weapons with frightening efficiency. The ship's interior was not just crew quarters and weapon systems. It was a complete manufacturing facility, capable of breaking down captured materials and rebuilding them into whatever the humans needed. "Sir, new contacts appearing around the enemy vessel," Tactical Officer Rendal reported, his voice shaking with disbelief. "Small craft launching from the human ship. But these are not the same design as their previous weapons." Commander Vextar watched in growing horror as dozens of small drones emerged from the Retribution's manufacturing base. These were not the crude kinetic projectiles that had started the battle. These new weapons incorporated Zephyrian technology, combining human engineering with alien materials to create hybrid weapons that were more dangerous than either species had ever produced alone. The drones moved with an intelligence that seemed almost alive. Under the coordination of Lieutenant Hajun Seok, they attacked in perfect formation, sharing information instantly and adapting their tactics in real time. When a Zephyrian ship destroyed one of the drones, the others immediately learned from its destruction, adjusting their approach to avoid the same fate. "This is impossible," Sub-Commander Thexaval whispered, staring at the tactical display. "They are manufacturing new weapons while fighting us. How can any ship carry a complete factory?" But as the battle continued, it became clear that the human concept of a warship was fundamentally different from anything the Zephyrians had ever imagined. The Retribution was not just a vessel designed to fight battles and then return to port for repairs and resupply. It was a mobile war machine designed to fight continuously, forever if necessary, growing stronger with each victory. Every destroyed Zephyrian ship became raw materials for new human weapons. Every fallen enemy became a source of technology that could be studied, understood, and improved upon. The humans had built a ship that turned warfare itself into a manufacturing process. "Sir, the drones are now using our own shield frequencies against us," Rendal reported, his voice filled with despair. "They have analyzed our defensive systems and modified their weapons accordingly. Our shields are useless." Lieutenant Ha-Jun Seok's voice cut across the communication channels, calm and professional as he directed his swarm of hybrid drones. "Target priority Alpha 7, weakness confirmed at junction point. Deploying modified Zephyrian plasma charges with human guidance. Systems, all units update targeting protocols." The newly built weapons struck with devastating precision, exploiting weaknesses in Zephyrian ship design that the aliens themselves had never known existed. The humans were not just fighting them, they were learning from them, adapting to them, becoming better killers with every moment that passed. Commander Vextar finally understood the terrifying truth. Human warfare was not about maintaining honor or following ancient traditions. It was about evolution in real time, adaptation under the ultimate pressure of life and death. The humans had built a ship that embodied this philosophy, a vessel that could learn, grow, and improve itself using the corpses of its enemies. They were not fighting a warship. They were fighting evolution itself. The battle for New Geneva finally came to an end, but not in any way that Commander Vextar could have imagined when his beautiful fleet first arrived at the human colony. The space around the planet was filled with debris, twisted metal that had once been proud Zephyrian warships, now nothing more than floating scrap and frozen bodies. The human ship Retribution was barely recognizable as the vessel that had emerged from hyperspace hours earlier. Its hull was cracked and scarred, with entire sections torn away to reveal the twisted metal skeleton beneath. Atmosphere leaked from dozens of breaches, creating glittering clouds of ice crystals that caught the light of New Geneva's twin suns. The ship's engines sputtered and sparked, clearly running far beyond safe operating limits, yet somehow, impossibly, it was still moving under its own power. Captain Park Ji-hoon's voice came across the communication channels one final time, weary but unbroken. Commander Vextar, the evacuation is complete. 50,000 civilians are safely aboard your transport vessels, which we are borrowing. They will be returned undamaged once our people reach safety. Vextar looked at his tactical display and felt his heart sink. Of the 200 ships he had brought to this backwater colony, expecting a simple surrender ceremony, only 120 remained operational. 80 of his vessels had been destroyed, or so badly damaged that they would never fly again. The loss of life was staggering. Thousands of trained Zephyrian crew members were dead or missing, all because of one human ship. "Sir," Sub-Commander Thexville said quietly, "how do we explain this to High Command? How do we tell them that a single primitive vessel defeated most of our fleet?" Before Vextar could answer, the Retribution's navigation systems powered up with a sound like thunder. The battered human ship was preparing to jump to hyperspace, its mission accomplished. But first, Navigation Officer Lee Yunwoo opened a final communication channel. Her voice was calm and professional, but it carried a warning that chilled Vextar to his very core. "Commander Vextar, when you report this incident to your superiors, please make sure they understand one critical fact. This was just one ship. We have thousands more where this came from. The human vessel disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind a field of wreckage that told the story of the most devastating military defeat in Zephyrian history. The transport ships carrying human civilians followed moments later, escorted by the few remaining human defense fighters that had survived the battle." Commander Vextar sat in his command chair, staring at the empty space where the human ship had been. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically to coordinate rescue operations for the survivors of their destroyed vessels. The beautiful, orderly world of Zephyrian warfare had been shattered in a single afternoon. He began composing his report to the High Command, knowing that every word would be scrutinized by the greatest military minds in the Confederation. How could he explain what had happened here? How could he make them understand that everything they thought they knew about warfare was wrong? The humans had not fought for honor or glory or territorial expansion. They had fought for survival, using methods that were brutal, efficient, and completely outside the Zephyrian understanding of civilized conflict. They had turned their own ship into a weapon, used their enemy's technology against them, and treated the laws of war as suggestions, to be ignored. Most terrifying of all, they had won. "Sir," Communications Officer Yelthar interrupted his thoughts. "We are receiving messages from other sectors. Similar incidents are being reported near human colonies throughout this region of space. Ships matching the description of the Retribution have appeared wherever our forces encountered human settlements." Vextar felt a cold certainty settle in his stomach. The humans had not sent one desperate ship to rescue their people from New Geneva. They had planned this, coordinated it across multiple star systems simultaneously. This was not a rescue mission. It was a declaration of war, but it was unlike any war the Zephyrians had ever faced. The humans did not treat warfare as a ritual to be performed with dignity and honor. They treated it as applied extinction, the complete destruction of anything that threatened their survival. As he continued writing his report, Vextar realized that the Confederation's 3,000 years of peaceful expansion were over. The humans had arrived. The ancient halls of the Zephyrian High Command had witnessed 3,000 years of peaceful expansion across the galaxy. Carved from crystalline stone that caught and reflected light in beautiful patterns, the chamber had been designed to inspire calm reflection and wise decision-making. But today, the elegant space felt more like a tomb, as Admiral Kethvar read Commander Vextar's report for the third time. The words on the datapad seemed impossible, like something from a nightmare rather than an official military document. One human ship had destroyed 80 Zephyrian vessels and successfully evacuated 50,000 civilians from a blockaded planet. The mathematics alone defied everything the Confederation understood about space warfare. "Tell me this is some kind of mistake," Admiral Kethvar said to his assembled staff officers. His voice echoed off the crystal walls, sounding hollow and defeated. "Tell me that Commander Vextar has suffered some kind of breakdown and is filing false reports." General Morthek stepped forward, his expression grim as he activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. Red warning markers appeared on the three-dimensional map of known space, each one representing a recent military engagement between Zephyrian forces and human vessels. "I wish I could, Admiral, but similar reports are coming in from 17 different sectors. Human ships have appeared at every location where our forces were engaged in operations near their colonies. The pattern is unmistakable and coordinated." The holographic display showed the scope of what was clearly a galaxy-wide military operation. Human vessels had struck simultaneously across thousands of light-years of space, each one targeting Zephyrian fleets that threatened human interests. The coordination required for such an operation suggested a level of military planning and communication that the Confederation had vastly underestimated. But what truly terrified Admiral Kethvar was not the scale of the human response, but the evolution he could see in their tactics. Each engagement report showed human ships using different strategies, different weapons, different approaches to combat. It was as if every human vessel was learning from the experiences of all the others. Intelligence Officer Daxmel, what can you tell us about human communication patterns during these engagements? The Admiral asked. The intelligence officer activated another display, this one showing intercepted human transmissions from across the various battle sites. "Admiral, we have recorded thousands of tactical communications between human vessels. During combat, they appear to be sharing real-time combat data, updating their strategies continuously based on what they learn from each engagement." A human voice filled the chamber, speaking in calm, professional tones that somehow made the words even more chilling. Intelligence Officer Nam Soo-hyun could be heard coordinating with other human ships across the galaxy. Adaptation protocol successful. Zephyrian shield frequencies mapped and counted. Updating fleet tactical database. All vessels implement modification 7 Alpha to kinetic projectile systems. Admiral Kethvar felt his blood turn cold as he listened to more intercepted communications. The humans were not just fighting individual battles. They were conducting a massive real-time experiment in warfare, with each engagement providing data that made all their other ships more deadly. "Sir," General Morthek said quietly, "analysis of the wreckage from multiple battle sites shows that no two human ships used identical weapons or tactics. Each vessel appears to be custom-built for specific types of combat, but all of them can adapt their systems based on what they encounter." The holographic display shifted to show technical analyses of human ship designs. Unlike the elegant, standardized vessels of the Zephyrian fleet, human ships were wildly different from each other. Some were built for ramming attacks, others for long-range bombardment, still others for electronic warfare or rapid manufacturing of new weapons during combat. But they all shared one terrifying characteristic. They were designed to learn and adapt while fighting. Admiral Kethvar stood up slowly, his joints aching with the weight of what he now understood. The Zephyrian Confederation had spent 3 millennia expanding peacefully through the galaxy because they had always been the strongest military force in any region they entered. Their honor-based warfare had worked because no one could truly challenge them. The humans were different. They came from a world where being the strongest meant nothing if you could not adapt faster than your enemies. They had spent 10,000 years fighting each other with every weapon they could imagine, and the survivors had learned that victory belonged not to the most honorable, but to the most flexible. "Send word to all fleet commanders," Admiral Kethvar said, his voice carrying the weight of a decision that would reshape galactic civilization. "Suspend all operations in human-controlled space. We are not dealing with another warrior species that follows the ancient codes of honor." He paused, looking around at the crystal chamber that represented everything the Confederation had built through peaceful expansion and civilized warfare. "We have encountered the graduates of the most violent military academy in the galaxy, and they are about to teach the rest of us how war is really fought."